For over 15 years, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Well, folks, where there's a will, there's a way, and while it may not be ideal, we are here. Our most sincere apologies for the nonsense that has occurred over the last 45 minutes. If we knew what happened, I can assure you we would have fixed it earlier. But the three of us, Dave, Drew, and Ezzy, I'm going to leave Jacob out of this, are not the most technologically savvy individuals. So it took us 45 minutes, but we are here to say good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. And for all those joining us live on our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, and anywhere you may be tuning in from, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Manouk, with Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Jacob Staller was our 9:30 guest after we had already delved deep into the Winnipeg Jets, getting you ready for tonight's game against the Washington Capitals. I thought that was one of our best conversations we've had in a very long time. So Jacob, welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Drew and Ez, you guys look very good on the vertical angle, I gotta say. It's a nice new look for you guys. You can continue it.
Thank you. Yes, I look better. I'm better north-south than I am east-west, I would argue.
Much better. Boys look sharp. I gotta say, happy birthday, Legal Curve, right? 16 years?
Mm-hmm. Yes, 16
crazy.
years since we started the Saturday show. Yeah.
Drew's getting his license today.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well,
and then based on the way the show started, I'm just going to drive my car right into a brick wall out of frustration.
Yeah.
So it'll be good in that sense.
Exactly. All right. Yeah. Thanks for having me, boys. Let's get into this before someone on the router.
Exactly. Before the technology breaks it down even further. We'll start with tonight's contest, the matchup of the top two teams in the league, the Jets and the Capitals. It's, of course, not getting the necessary and requisite attention that it deserves nationally, but that's to be expected. I mean, from your perspective, Jacob, just these top two teams, the Jets and the Capitals, is this just going to be a fun hockey game between these two, or is there anything sort of more at stake in terms of a battle of bragging rights sort of situation?
Yeah, I don't think there's much there in terms of the standings storyline. I don't think if you go to either room and try to rev them up, anyone's going to really latch onto that. I think the Dubois storylines expired too, so I think we're past the point there. What I'm interested to see, purely from a hockey fan perspective, or journalist, I should say, is what these Capitals look like against what they try to be a tight checking defensive Jets team. Can they contain a team that is four lines deep with a lot of speed in the Capitals, not to mention the greatest goal scorer of all time? So that's what I'm kind of looking forward to seeing. But I don't know. Did anyone think that these two teams would be atop the league this year? I don't even know. I wouldn't even be able to fathom that. I still can't really, to be honest, and there's still a bit of hockey left. But, I don't know. I don't buy much into the 1 versus 2 in the whole league narrative.
Yeah, and, speaking of things that you can't fathom and a narrative, I think, there might be a little bit of a kind of side narrative in addition to the fact that these are the top two teams in the league, that you have two players that are looking like they were big-time omissions by Team Canada. Obviously, talking about Mark Scheifele and Logan Thompson. Logan Thompson's numbers, I mean, compared to Connor Hellebuck's, they maybe don't look super impressive. I'm obviously joking, but we got to talk about Scheifele, Jacob, because obviously, 230 goal scorers for the Jets right now. Both of these guys can hit 50 goals and 100 points. I think it goes without saying that Scheifele's playing some of the best hockey of his career, but what's kind of stood out to you since obviously he was omitted from Team Canada? Because a lot of us obviously thought he might represent his country at the Four Nations.
Yeah, I think that, first off, I mean, Canada needs to really hope that they have a successful Four Nations, because I'm seeing a bit of a tune of similar to the World Juniors, where they didn't take certain guys because of stylistic fits and roles. And that bit them in the butt pretty bad. And this is a trend a bit with Hockey Canada. Like, I think it's insane that Drew Doughty is supposedly the shoe-in to replace Pietrangelo. No disrespect to Drew Doughty, future Hall of Famer, but it's like, if you're sizing up who would be better in a tournament, it's Mackenzie Weegar right now. Doughty hasn't played in 6 months. That's just a fact. But, so Hockey Canada has those mistakes. What I've seen of Mark Scheifele this year is just a player that has been able to, for the first time in a long time, really adapt his game. Like, for a long time, Mark Scheifele was the most predictable player ever. He'd take the puck, he was a center, he'd end up on the wall, he'd stick handle 3 or 4 times, look at his peripherals, and try to find Kyle Connor. That was smooth every single time. And teams clamped on that, right? You could game plan for that, and you saw it. That's another reason, too, why the power play was kind of bland last year, right? It was the same option, find Kyle Connor. This year, what I'm finding, and maybe part of it's the extended time with Velarde, too. There's other wrinkles, but Scheifele isn't, I don't want to say afraid to shoot. Like, guys, remember how he was in that conference final run? Like, Mark Scheifele's not a bad shooter by any means or hesitant, but I think he's opened up to the idea of just being more assertive, like less east-west, more north-south. Even on some of the power play entries, I've noticed it, and that's, to me, the biggest reason that we're seeing this season from Mark Scheifele. And, when you put it all together with Scheifele, like just being a bit more assertive like this year, you come to realize, like, man, we've underappreciated how good this guy was, but also, furthermore, like, this is what he is, right? Like, he is a star player. And I said this on WST the other day. I think that the most encouraging part, too, is the way he's scoring goals in front of the net, creating down the wall. That's how you score goals in the playoffs. And I think everything Scheifele and that line has done is really encouraging.
Jacob, one of the big storylines, of course, is I should say sometimes is it takes a while for things, especially in the mid part of the season, 53 games in for the Jets, for there to be excitement. One of the things we talked about in the post game after Boston was what the boost of Parker Ford could do for this franchise, because it's not so much that he's going to come in and he's going to score a goal every single game, Nikita Chibrikov style, but I'm sure they'd be okay with that. But just the fact that in a kind of a game that, it was 6 weeks after the last time these two teams met, so that the juice from the Gustafsson Frederick thing was done. There wasn't really that, you don't have Adam Lowry in the lineup, so you're not expecting too much of a physical element from Winnipeg. But what did your takeaway from? I know you wrote about it for Sportsnet, but just in terms of what was your big takeaway of seeing Parker Ford injected into the lineup, an hour and a half away from his hometown in Rhode Island? What was your kind of big takeaway from that little boost in the mid part of the season?
Well, Dave, this, so it's not surprising to you, but my takeaway was, okay, there's some crops on the farm. Like the Moose, the record's been terrible this year. Obviously, in turn, guys like Chibrikov, Lambert, and those guys statistically aren't performing maybe what the naked eye would expect, right? But of course, there's nuance that required when you're the lowest scoring AHL team. That's going to happen. But for me, it's like, okay, you look at Parker Ford and doing that, and it's like, that's a pretty encouraging sight, because we don't know what next year's going to look like. We don't know who the Jets will be able to resign, who they won't. And, with the rising salary cap, guys, more and more, even more than the flat cap era, so to speak, drafting and developing is going to be extremely important for them. And that's the same goes for college free agency signings. So I'm very curious to see if we see Parker Ford again, to be honest. Like, for my money, especially with Chibrikov out now too. But if you're needing a bottom 6 forward, I don't know how putting Brad Lambert into the lineup and reshuffling things necessarily helps. Whereas if you plug Parker Ford in, as we saw there, things stay the same relatively in terms of your deployment and lineups. Now, this is a hypothetical situation. Maybe the Jets can't score, need some speed. Sure, put Lambert in, whatever. But for my money, like I'm putting Parker Ford in over Toninato. And listen, I know it's been one game, but it's like these types of things. And Dave, you and I have talked about this a lot of times. Like giving the little taste of some of these prospects and players is massive for them. Even me on the road trip itself. Like you talk to any player that's been in the NHL and AHL, they say once you have the taste, you want the full bite of the national. Like you just want, like you don't want to be on the buses or flying, like you want to be living that style, and it's motivating. But I think too, like Don Toninato, good captain, great veteran for the Moose. What's he going to be for this team next year or even in the playoff run? Just a body. So I think if you can, Parker Ford would be my shoe-in to recall for those reasons.
Jacob Staller is our guest here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. A bit of an awkward edition of the show if you're just joining us, but we're working through all of our technical issues. Jacob, of course, you know him from his great work and his great writing on the Jets on sportsnet.ca. Now, Jacob, we remember back at the start of the year, the incredible start to the season the Jets have where, they're setting records, league records for their success. Then they sort of go through that little bit of a dip, right after the sort of the winning streak comes to an end. And then the month of January comes along and they sort of reaffirm themselves as one of the top teams, really since the middle of December, one of the top teams in the NHL. Arguably, is it more impressive what they've done in the last 6 weeks, 7 weeks than at the beginning of the year, given that they now have that target on their back, that, every team isn't sort of underestimating them anymore. And instead the Jets are able to respond with some of the best, some of the top of the league numbers that we've seen over the last 6-7 weeks?
Honestly, Drew, you may be the wrong person to ask that to, because I'm very much against the narrative of like getting their best, so to speak. I think that the NHL, the way it is now, every team knows what they're getting in these teams, and the whole underrated, underappreciated isn't really there when you're in the thick of it. But to your point, Drew, I will say, I think why this is the most impressive now is not so much the target on the back element, but rather the fact that they're down from the high. Like they're not, they've gone through those massive dips and lulls, and they've gone through Dylan Sandberg being injured. They've gone through losing Nikolai Ehlers, Adam Lowry now, and they're finding ways to win games. And when I talked to Scott Arneal for a feature for Sportsnet back in November, he made a really interesting point that in talking to the players, last year's regular season was so gratifying, kind of, and it was just like a great season that, then the playoffs come around and it's like you don't have those battle scars, right? Or he calls them calluses. Mm-hmm. And to me, I think the fact that the Jets haven't, if you take away that 3-7 stretch in there, the Jets have been amazing since the streak, right? It's just one little lull where there was injuries. So to me, I look at this and I see a hockey team that's consistently been able to rebound. You saw it against Utah when they were called up by Arneal, came back to beat Colorado. You saw it against Florida when this is dating back to November when they got their butt kicked by the Stanley Cup champs. Next game, they beat them in their own barn. And then you saw it in October, late October, when the Leafs came in and, as Arneal said, punched them in the nose. They had a great game against Detroit the following game. That is important, in my opinion. That is an important bit of, adversity, facing adversity the way this team has and bouncing back and winning in different ways is going to serve them better. And I will say I have more confidence or belief, rather, in watching this team this year than last year. And it's not even close, to be honest, because I just think that there's so many different layers they bring you at. It's not like, I don't know if you guys think this, but aside from Connor Hellebuck, maybe Morrissey and Scheifele, whatever, aside from Hellebuck, if the Jets lose one player, I don't think people are like, that's it, see you later. Like, I think there's a bit of a, okay, they can by committee. As I say that, I realize the idea of losing Scheifele and Morrissey would suck. And I'm going to get torched. So maybe don't lean too much into that one. But I think hopefully my point stretches through.
No, I think I'm with you. I think that Hellebuck is the obvious one that you don't want to lose. But if they were to lose one of their top players, whether it's Scheifele, Connor, Velarde, Ehlers, Morrissey, I mean, Morrissey is a bit of a different story because there's not as much depth there on the left side. But Jacob, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, if let's use Ehlers is out of the lineup, which he was, the Jets were able to withstand that and still win hockey games. And I wanted to ask you, just switching a little bit, pivoting here to defensemen, you had a great article on sportsnet.ca about Dylan Sandberg. And we did a whole segment, I don't know if that was a month ago, 6 weeks ago, about Sandberg. And that's why, I love the article so much, because I'm in fully agreement with you in terms of giving Sandberg a long-term contract. Obviously, we don't know if that's ultimately going to happen, but you did a great job diving into the underlying numbers for sportsnet.ca, and you get into penalty kill blocks per 60, and you get into takeaways. Dylan Sandberg is 7th in the entire league in takeaways per 60. I mean, does it just make too much sense to sign Sandberg to more than maybe 4 or 5 years based on his age and just based on, look, the numbers don't lie. The Jets' record when Sandberg's in the lineup this year is incredible.
Yeah, lock him up. Like, don't even think twice. Give him 7, 8 years. Throw the keys away. I don't think you think too much into it. Here's the thing, though. When I wrote that article, I wrote it in the angle that, you pay him a bit more than maybe people would expect right now, but the cap's going up. I did not expect the cap to go up to 113 million. So, like, this is a different question. I encourage you to read the article on sportsnet.ca, but maybe with the caveat in the back of your mind, add 13 million to the projections there. I know it's a lot of mental math, many of which I couldn't even do. Here's the thing with Sandberg. Dylan Sandberg is 26 years old. By traditional standards, he is not a prospect, so to speak. But what he is he's an NHL defenseman that is right now blossoming and evolving. As much as we talk about development as AHL to NHL, junior to AHL, whatever it may be, there's also that element of, okay, I'm an NHL regular, great. Now how do I become a driver? We've seen that with Dylan Sandberg now, and I don't think you look at age curves at face value. You can't say, oh, he's only a couple years away from declining. No, I think he's actually a couple years away from being even better than he is now, frankly, the way that he's treading up. And so with that said, the way that Dylan Sandberg has progressed particularly with the puck, okay, like his puck moving ability, and then the way his defensive game is rounded out, he, as you said, as he 7th in takeaways, but also according to all 3 zones, he's like 7th in zone denials too. And if you watch a Jets game, that's probably not a surprise given the way he's able to do that. The way he's progressed with the puck moving, defensive play, like, this is a solidified number 3 defenseman that maybe on a different team in a year or two could become a number 1 defenseman or a top pairing defenseman. Maybe not number 1. I want to be very clear. Top pairing. So I think you go 8 years. That's where you start with. Hey, both sides, we want 8 years. What does the number look like? We maybe need a part 2 to that, Ezzy, because this has changed. Listen, I think that Dylan Sandberg wants to be a Jet for life. I don't say that lightly. If you talk to the locker room or just have a quick chat, like, the guy, you don't need to really like fish. Not that you do this with other guys, but without having to even ask, it comes up pretty organically that he's a big fan of the city, or he likes a lot of these things. It's close to home. There's something about that locker room where they all really love each other. So I do think he will sign up there. The one caution I will say is, don't freak out, Jets fans, if you see that number a bit higher than maybe you'd want, because the cap is going up and it's going to be integral for the Jets to get those value deals.
Well, Jacob, we always know that the Jets don't win free agency. July 1st is a very, how do I put it nicely, boring time if you're wasting a summer day inside Canada Life Center, because it's not a day the Jets are particularly active. But I would say the Jets won pre-free agency with the signing of Davis Payne on June 17th of 2024. Just from your perspective, and we know how good the power play has been. We've had people on to break it down, but has there been a bigger signing by Winnipeg in years than getting Davis Payne and his, schemes and his figuring out a good way of using the talent that he has around him than that signing?
No, he is the signing of the year. I'm actually working on a piece about Davis Payne, and I will give a little teaser about something.
Ooh.
If you Google Davis Payne on YouTube and search,
not now, you're watching the show.
If you were to one day had some free time and you were bored on YouTube, not now on this beautiful Saturday morning with Legal Curve,
or Sunday mornings,
or Sunday mornings, yeah, with WSC Sunday Live, not as good as Drew. If you look up Davis Payne coaches seminar, there's a video, it's quite long, of him talking about the power play. And this was done a couple years ago when he's with Ottawa. And the entire video is about being aggressive on the power play.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about it through the lens of Ottawa. And it is pretty eerie, almost, like how much it related to what he's come in and done with Winnipeg and how effective it's been. So when he was coaching Ottawa, they weren't one of the best power plays in the league, but their shot volume was always very high. Okay, I think that some of the issues were younger team, maybe not the best finishers in some spots, but they were always pelting shots out there. And just the way they've been able to, for example, getting Ehlers in the power play one, finally, getting, different options rolling around, quicker movement. No wonder this is such a deadly power play. You watch it, it's like, how is this ever not a thing? And it's just, it's a massive, massive advantage for them. Special teams are important, especially in the power play. Like, you look at the Colorado series from last year, how many times were the Jets within a goal and there was a power play and you're watching from your couch and you're like, they're not scoring. Like, no matter what happens here, they're not scoring. Tyler Toffoli is going to hold the puck, shoot into a shin pad, and then they're going to go reset in 10 seconds. Like, no one was like, all right, goal time. No. Now, I think if the Jets get a power play, that's where I think penalty kills and power plays and that reputation puts people on notice. Like, the Jets have so many options. You cannot just seal off Kyle Connor because Gabe Villard will make you pay. You can't just get Villari net front because then Scheifele and Connor will go back and forth and boom, either comes down the middle. Surprise, the best Danish treat you've ever had scores on you too. So you're kind of screwed when you play against them. But yes, Dave, Davis Payne is the number one signing.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you play against the Jets power playoff and Jacob Staller, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Jacob, you were talking about the salary cap before as it pertains to Dylan Samberg. And I think we all knew it was going up. I don't think any of us necessarily expected that it was going to rise as quickly and as rapidly as they announced yesterday. How does that change the calculus vis-a-vis the unrestricted free agents that the Jets have pending after this season? I mean, we know the names. It's been talked about all season. What are they going to do? Are they going to walk? Can't they now, theoretically, if the Jets are going to be a cap team in the future, and that's a question for Mark Chipman, of course, can't they theoretically afford all these guys?
Well, again, that's a question for Mark Chipman, of course. But
but for argument's sake, let's assume they're going to be a cap team.
The Jets are going to be a cap team. I don't assume they're going to be a cap team. I don't think they're the only team that won't be a cap team. I think that if you look at the reports, there's quite a bit from Canadian teams to other smaller markets. Like, for example, Columbus, okay? They're a smaller market that is not, from my understanding, one of the higher HRR, hockey revenue. What's the other R? Don't know.
Hockey-related revenue. Come on.
Bingo. Is one of the lowest earners there. So there's talk of, can they be able to spend the cap? Like, can they justify it? Take that to a smaller Canadian market where your income is Canadian, you're paying an American, and it's going up and up and up, let alone some of the attendance issues. There'll be some pause there, right? So I think it's going to be more of a year-by-year situation, and that, Drew, is going to be the interesting part here. When they're sizing up, can we sign Neil Pionk to an 8-year deal or 7-year deal, whatever? They have to look at, okay, what are we willing to pay him relative to what we're willing to spend each year? And that number may not be a reflection of the salary cap. So their offer to Neil Pionk might be lower than he wants. It might be higher than Jets fans want as well. I don't know. But I think that the biggest takeaway for me, the salary cap rising, is good news. Thank God they got Scheifele and Hellebuyck signed, because my God, guys, that was a steal in the $88 million cap this year, and now it is going to be grand larceny in the 113 gazillion cap, whatever it's going to be. So I think that the way that it changes free agency in the short term is what we all thought Ehlers would get or wouldn't get, what Pionk would, what wouldn't, what Eiffel could get. Throw those numbers out into the water. Like, stop. Like, don't freak out if Ehlers makes 8x8. Like, I talked with Connor Rapchuk. I said in this salary cap climate, I don't think teams will pay him that given the lack of playoff success. Text him right after. I'm saying scrap that. Like, it's happening because it's all percentage of the cap, guys. It doesn't matter. Like, what you guys, what fans think a $6 million player is now is the equivalent a couple of years to a $5 million player, $4.6 million. So we need to all get a cap calculator, have it handy with us. I still need one. It's no shame. But realize that some of these signings will be a bit higher than we would expect, so to speak.
Speaking of signings, unrelated to the Winnipeg Jets, but relevant to sports fans in Winnipeg, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers announced about 5 minutes ago that they've re-signed wide receiver Dalton Schoen to a 1-year contract. So he was a pending unrestricted free agent. He was set to hit free agency later this month. The Bombers have re-signed Dalton Schoen, who, of course, missed a big chunk of last year with that injury. So there's a little bit of Blue Bomber news on the Jets show on this Saturday morning.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Drew, because I was out. I'm not going to mention the place I was out last night, but the Bombers cheerleaders showed up to the restaurant I was at yesterday. So it's funny you mentioned that. But obviously, Dalton Schoen, a huge part of the piece of the puzzle, great receiver, obviously had the last year. We're not a Bomber show, but Jacob, I just with the salary cap, like you mentioned the steal of the $88 million cap. When you consider that Dmitry Orlov makes $7.75 million and Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele make $8.5 million, I mean, there's an argument there that these are $12 to $14 million a year players, right? So I do think that, it bears repeating and a little bit more discussion about really how truly incredible the fact that Chevy got Scheifele and Hellebuck signed for $8.5 million a year.
I can't believe it. Like, okay, at the time, guys, and everyone knows this, I think everyone was like, Hellebuck made 8 points. Like, I think before we were talking about him making 10 at that time. Like, that was a huge discussion. So that's a win. And then inflation. Yeah, it is. I can't even. Let's also dial this back. Every long-term bet Chevy's made has worked. Every single, and I'm talking about over 5 years deals. Ehlers, relatively worked out, $6 million. Kyle Connor, and let me know if I'm forgetting someone, guys, but this is just top of mind for me.
Also, Jacob, I think Ehlers might even get more than $8 million a year.
Oh, for sure. I think way more. Not way more. Maybe closer. I don't know.
8.5.
I don't know. This is a guy with no playoff success.
Yeah, but we don't have to get into those numbers. You know the numbers. His impact at 5-on-5, power play, right?
Oh, yeah.
I think at the very least you're talking about an $8 million a year player.
Yeah. Maybe you're right. Hey, I'm guilty of my own not taking my own advice. I'm having a hard time digesting that number and not using my friendly dently cap calculator. But
especially like you said with the ridiculous, like yesterday the cap numbers came out, or 2 days ago, I forget which day it was, and it just kept going up. Like by 2028, 29, the cap's going to be 130 million or something, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. No, you're right. You're definitely right. Like, I think that the Hellebuck Scheifele deals are the best example of a long pattern here. The deal they signed Kyle Connor to aged unbelievably over the last couple of years. Josh Morrissey, like, guys, every core piece that they've had, they've been able to lock up and get excess surplus value, which is what you need to do to win a cup, let alone in the smallest market in the league with a complete inability to sign even B-C level free agents. So kudos to them, honestly. Like, I mean, the Jets deserve all the credit in the world for being able to do that. You would think that a smaller market would have to overpay on certain things, but they've been able to gamble, strike early, and win those deals.
Jacob Stoller, Sportsnet.ca. He covers the Winnipeg Jets. He's a great friend of the show. Jacob, appreciate your patience as we work through our issues this morning, and thanks for joining us and providing some great insight into the Jets. Enjoy tonight's Jets-Capitals game.
Will do. Thanks, boys. Happy birthday, IC Morning Show.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. There he goes, Jacob Stoller, joining us this morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We'll go to break. When we come back, more on the Winnipeg Jets, the Jets and the Capitals later tonight, of course, and Jeff O'Neill, the O-Dog, is set to join us at the bottom of the hour. We're a little bit awkward, but we're still here nonetheless. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by Play Now.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Saturday morning, welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you, making our way through a bit of an awkward program, but nonetheless, we're thrilled to be with you here on this Saturday morning, talking about the Jets. They're in action later tonight, of course, against the Washington Capitals. That ought to be a great battle between the two top teams in the NHL. It's going to be a good one. The Jets, of course, on the ice for morning skate so far. It seems like there's been no changes to their lineup as far as we can tell based on the morning reports. So not a real big surprise, I would say, given the Jets' performance on Thursday night in Boston. But the Jets, of course, they're looking forward to doing battle in Washington tonight against the Capitals. We'll have the post-game show for you later on. Yes, Dave?
Well, since you guys are awkward and can't see, we got the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, in the waiting room right now. So I'm going to bring him in. We're going to get going with Jeff O'Neill right now.
I like it.
There he goes. O-Dog, good morning. Welcome to back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. How are things?
Guys, you first have to explain to me what's been awkward. I love awkwardness, so explain to me. What's gone on thus far where it got awkward? Maybe I can help out.
Well, it's technologically awkward. None of our technology worked to start the show, which is why I'm on my cell phone, which is why Ezzy's on his cell phone. So the first 45 minutes of the show were basically us cursing and saying, "Can you hear us?" Well, our loyal audience members were wondering what the hell's going on. So if you want the 45 minutes of that, it's a lot of fun.
Wasn't there a part of all of you, because I've had these experiences before, where you're just like, this ain't happening today. Like,
yeah.
This is not happening today, and we're not doing it. But I'm glad you guys are back up and running and everything's good.
Yeah, we fought through the adversity. I mean, I think that speaks to our character, our intestinal fortitude, and our commitment to the team that is Illegal Curve, that we were going to find a way one way or the other.
Oh, dog, I was going to go back to sleep, but you were coming on the show, so I decided to stick around.
Yeah, well, as soon as I'm done here, I'm going back to sleep.
Jeff, we appreciate you giving us your time as always. Tonight, let's start with what's happening tonight between the Jets and the Capitals, the top two teams in the NHL. Having played in games, similar to this one, where, you're going up against another, not a rival, because these two teams haven't played each other this year. They don't have much of a history, since the Southeast Division way back when. But, is there a little extra juice when you're playing against the team that's, right next to you for a top of the NHL standings at this point?
I think it's a fantastic matchup. I mean, first of all, the Jets have been unbelievable basically since the drop of the puck. They had a bit of a dip, but not much. But who expected the Capitals to be where they are? Like last year, I said these guys are going to, at the beginning of the season, I watched them first 5 or 10 games. I'm like, they might be the worst team in the league. Then they turned it, and then this year again, they're right at the top. Like Spencer Carberry, they could just give him the Jack Adams right now because it's just an incredible team to watch. And for all the fan bases and the general managers and coaches that are complaining about their team play, I think a great example, 2 examples, are the Washington Capitals and the Minnesota Wild. Like they just play an unbelievable team game where everybody's on board, everybody does what they're supposed to. And it drives me nuts when their opposition at the end of the game, they're like, this team's really structured and they made us pay for some, like, well, why wouldn't you be really structured? That's kind of what they do. But as far as the matchup, it's just always, I think it's great. I think the litmus test game or the measuring stick game is kind of a little bit overrated. But you're just looking at them and what they've done, the Capitals, and you're saying, all right, we're a great team too. So let's just see how it stacks up. And I don't think it's too crazy to say, you know what, maybe in some kind of dreamland, maybe it's not that much of an exaggeration to be a dreamland, but maybe some scenario down the road we could meet these guys in a series, and you guys know what I'm talking about. So let's just see what we got and see how we stack up. You never really want to be a part of the Ovi equation where he rips home 3 and gets closer and closer. But I watched the Jets play a bit in Montreal the other night. They were impressive. I know Montreal maybe didn't have their best stuff, but what I really like a lot about their game is just the subtle details of what they're doing offensively. Like they own the board play in Montreal's defensive zone. Like just little plays like Kyle Connor and Scheifele and Velarde in that top line. Like they would hustle the pucks to keep plays alive and little spin moves. And their play along the boards and their offensive cycle was incredible. So that's really where they make their hay. And they were impressive to watch. They pretty much went into Montreal and dusted them. And then they got the goaltender doing what he does, and it's just been a great story. But as far as I know that's a long-winded answer, but the matchup tonight, it's just a great matchup where you look at what the opposition's been doing. And you say, okay, how do we stack up?
Absolutely. And just going back to the Washington Capitals, you mentioned Alex Ovechkin, and he's obviously, 18 away from tying Gretzky now, 19 away from setting the record. And obviously a lot of Jets fans are going to be excited to watch Ovechkin play the Jets tonight. And I just keep thinking about how remarkable it is that, he's putting up these type of goal and point totals at his age. And, not to mention what Sidney Crosby's doing. And I just keep reminding myself, like, we should just be cherishing every moment of this because this is just absolutely incredible. At the beginning of the season, the question was he going to tie the record, obviously, and now it seems just to be a matter of time before he's going to break that record.
Well, I don't know what you think, but usually Gretzky's record, there's like 5 or 6 guys listed on a list, and then there's Gretzky at the top that's so far out of reach. It is just incredible. And I thought the same for this one. As good as Ovi's been and as consistent as he's been, I'm just like, he's not scoring that many goals. And then he started getting older, and I was like, now he's really not doing it. But then he just keeps pumping them home, and it's like, this guy's actually going to do this. And the fact, I mentioned the Caps at the beginning of the last year. You could, I was throwing Ovi in there too. He didn't look very good. It looked like, okay, now everything's taking its toll. The hair's a little grayer. He's moving a little slower. Then the second half of the season, he ripped home like 25 goals and ended up with 30-something. And then you're like, well, if he has a good year next year, he's actually going to do this. So it seems like all those major records were done in the 80s when Gretz was playing and Lemieux. But to watch this on a nightly basis, it's a pretty cool thing for sure.
Just quickly before Dave gets in here, you mentioned all the other records he has. I do think it's worth mentioning again that no one is going to come close to those 1,963 assists or whatever it is. That's something that even Crosby is, I think, 700 plus away from. So I think that's also something worth mentioning, that yes, Ovechkin's going to get that goals record, but that assist record, I think, is never going to be broken.
Well, assist and total points, I think, is pretty much
Right.
out of everybody. Don't you agree? Like, it's just,
Yeah.
But who knows? I thought the goals and everything else would not be. There might be some wonder kid come along, and God, I don't know how the hell he's going to do it, because somebody's like, there's one stat that popped up. It's like Gretzky had 1,000 points after like 4 years, it was something stupid. It was just, it's crazy how quickly he accumulated points, like his first 4 or 5 years in the league.
Jeff, from getting back to the Jets and the Four Nations that's upcoming, Mark Scheifele, of course, left off the roster. We know how much pride he takes in him and Connor Hellebuck. Their focus is on Stanley Cup. As soon as they sign their long-term contracts, those guys 100% was about legacy. And Scheifele, we've seen changes to his game that focus on, not necessarily just being offensively minded, but from your perspective, because it seems like he's gone extra level since the announcement of the team and since he was left off of it. What can that do to a player when you get left off of something like that?
Well, I remember I said no a lot to the World Championships, and I knew that if there was like an Olympic roster or even a summer camp, and I had my 40-goal season, I was like, maybe I'll get an invite to the summer camp, and it was like not even close, not even a phone call. That I kind of knew it was coming. But to watch Scheifele play and just kind of zeroing in on him the other night, it's somewhat shocking that he's not on that team. Like, you're telling me that Mark Scheifele, like, with those mega stars up top, you would think that he would be the ultimate complementary player, like some kind of third line center, or put him on the wing with Braden Point. I don't know where it's going to be, but for him to be left off that team, it's looking back, they picked other guys, whether it be Hagel or Jarvis, but I don't know. Mark Scheifele seems like the kind of guy that could be a Swiss Army knife for that team and do a bunch of different things. But I think I don't know how much he took it personally. I don't know if he was like, well, it was kind of like a 50-50 thing to begin with, but it sure looks like he's taking it personally. He's playing extremely well. I wonder what his reaction would be if there's another injury up front. If they asked him, sometimes you're just like, don't even think about calling me. But you just watch him play and you're like, how could he not be on that team? But maybe the Winnipeg Jets are loving it because he's like, but now my focus is on the Jets and winning with these guys. And you talked about the two players signing long-term. And I think sometimes guys sign contracts and they just automatically blurt out the phrase, like, I'm here to win it all. When in reality, it's like, do they really think that? Like, is that a possibility? But you got to think for the Jets, it is a real possibility with that record they have. And the thing is, guys, I've been buying into the Winnipeg Jets for I don't know how long. It's been a long time. I'm talking Buffalo days where I'm like, these guys are solid top to bottom, and they got the goaltending. I can't see a team beating them 4 times, and they've let me down a bunch of times. There's like the Leafs let down, and then the Winnipeg Jets are like right after the Leafs. But this year they made me buy in again. I thought I was completely done with them, and I thought I was moving on. But they just suck you back in. Even last year, you're like, what did they take down Colorado the first game? And it was like, here we go. These guys might be up to something. And then they got absolutely smoked. So you're watching this. And the curious thing is, what are they going to do at the deadline? I mean, like, what are you actually going to do? I mean, you look at Nemestikov and you're like, could you have an upgrade at that position? But then I always think to myself, they've had such a good year and they've been so good. Do you really need to just blow out a first-round pick to bring in Tyler Toffoli types and Sean Monahan types? Although I really like Sean Monahan, but I don't know. It just seems like maybe stand pat unless there's somebody really, really good, like a big-time difference maker. And I don't know who that's going to be. The league's kind of getting a little bit crazy right now. I never thought Mikko Rantanen would be traded, but obviously if you can get an upgrade, you do it. But I just don't know what that would do and how it would screw with the chemistry because they've been so good throughout the regular season.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about, Jeff, is the chemistry in that locker room, which we know is so tight knit and they all get along. And, we've seen other teams, namely Vancouver, what happens when maybe the right chemistry doesn't exist in the room. So, that sort of the risk reward there of, disrupting the chemistry. But at the same time, you look at the Jets and you say there's opportunities for upgrade. There's areas that that a typical Stanley Cup contender, a Stanley Cup winner has better players than the Jets currently have in certain areas. It's just, I was going to say, ask you about the delicate nature of bringing in players to a dressing room, especially later in the year at that, after you've had success, and then the resulting change in roles for everybody.
Well, I think people do their homework, and I'm sure somebody like Chevy would talk to the coach, talk to different players. It's not hard in the NHL. It's a real small community, to be honest with you. And it's very easy to find out what a guy's up to or what he's like and how he approaches the game. But you just got to think going into a playoff series, a lot of times, let's just use the Colorado Avalanche as an example. And we talked about Mark Scheifele. Like, instead of trading for a guy to play on the second line, Mark Scheifele's got to find a way to go head to head with Nathan McKinnon and almost match him or try to be better than him in a playoff series. And the other matchup is the other guy that you're talking about signing a long-term contract. Their goaltender has got to show in a series that he's way better than the other guy at the other end. Mm-hmm. And if you want to use Mackenzie Blackwood as an example, Connor Hellebuck's got to be going in the series saying, I'm a way better goalie than this guy. My stats prove it. My regular season proves it. And I got to prove it into a playoff series. So that should almost be the focus of, Maple Leafs are in the same situation. It's like Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner and Nylander and all those guys, they got to be better than who they're playing against. Forget about isolating on a guy you brought into the deadline and kind of going through the numbers that he put up in a playoff series. The guys that you've invested in and you declare your best players, they got to play better than the other guy. If McKinnon decides he's going to mop up the floor with you, you got no chance in the series.
Absolutely. And, ODog, we got to talk about the JT Miller trade. I'm pretty sure that trade happened after you guys were on air for Overdrive. Obviously, everybody expected JT Miller and possibly Elias Pettersson to be traded. But what did you think of the return and kind of how did you think Jim Rutherford and the Canucks organization, Patrick Alvin, how do you think they handled that situation? Because obviously we were hearing everything through the media, but it seemed like it was, speaking of awkward, I think we would all agree that was a pretty awkward situation there in Vancouver.
I absolutely hate it for the Vancouver Canucks, for the guys in the dressing room, for Jimmy and Alvin in management and the fan base, because it was a mess there and they got it straightened out. Jimmy came in and brought Rick Tocchet in, and the team starts playing well. They almost win the President's Trophy. And if you look at the Vancouver Canucks fan base, what are they saying to themselves? Oh, so what? We get one good year where everything seems to go our way and we have a good team and our goalie's good and our star players are playing well. And it looks like everything's set to move forward for the next 5 or 6 years. And what? We get one good year and then all of a sudden everything lights up in flames. Our goaltender's injured. Our two best players don't get along. We've ultimately declared that we've got to move one of them, and they lose the trade. I mean, they got backed into a corner, and it's like you're bringing in a guy. Look at his stats. It's not hard to pull up his stats. It's like you're losing 100-point guy. And I don't know. I just thought that there was a chance that Quinn Hughes and Rick Tocchet and possibly Jimmy Rutherford would have sat in a room and said, guys, for us to be a quality team, it's Pettersson after Miller, and you guys are a 1-2 punch, and that's what makes us dangerous. Can we not figure this thing out somehow? Because, God damn it, we had one good year, and now what? One of you guys are going to leave? It just really sucks for the fan base. It really drives me nuts, to be honest with you. Lots of guys, and I hate dating myself because the game is so different now, but I've had many conversations with some of my former teammates saying, can you believe that these two couldn't have put their differences aside? Tons of guys played together. It's like about on the ice and winning. Off the ice, you never have to be around the person. You don't have to go out to dinner with them. But on the ice, you're on the same team and you go out and try to win a game. Played with tons of guys I didn't really care for, but on the ice, they're your teammates. But these guys just couldn't do it, I guess. And the ISO cam now is right on Pettersson because he's the guy who's making 11-6. And I don't know if this was his wish, but he clearly didn't want the guy around or clearly couldn't make it work with him around. And now it's like, what do you got, man? Because earlier in his career, I loved watching that guy play. He was a dominant player. He was fast. He was intense. He always had a puck. He made plays. And he just seems to be a guy that's just a shell of himself right now.
Yeah.
It's like he never gets the puck, doesn't dominate, doesn't hustle, doesn't seem like he puts much time into his game. I don't know what he does, but he just seems like he's always pissy and whiny and everything bothers him. It's like, what are you going to do now? Like, what do you got? Are you going to start making it happen? Because I'll have the ISO cam on that guy every single night.
You know, Jeff, this is the 16th anniversary show of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, and we know all too well what it's like to work with someone we don't love that much, but you know what? We get through it.
That's how we describe Drew O'Dog, pissy and whiny.
Yeah. He's pointing at me in case you couldn't tell, Jeff.
Well, that's for the people on the podcast.
Same way about all three of you, to be honest.
But, you know, Jeff, the one question I had for you is, yesterday we saw it, or not, 2 days ago, sorry, in Boston, we saw Parker Ford, you know, a young kid signed out of Providence College, played for the Moose, played all 72 games for the Moose last year, played all the games till his recall this year for Manitoba. But, you know, in game 53, the season's going along. The Jets are chugging along. They'd won 4 in a row to that point before going to Boston. What kind of energy does that bring for a guy who's going to make his NHL debut? And not only is he making his debut, he's making it an hour and a half away from his hometown. So his family and friends are all able to be there and support him in that way.
That's always a great story when you see the clips, you see the goal, and then you see all the family there in the one row in Boston, which is probably a weird place to be wearing Winnipeg stuff and cheering, because those guys get some beers into them and they could probably be pretty ruthless. But the way it's been going for the Bruins, they were probably cheering for his first goal as well. It's always an exciting time to see a young guy like that come up and score his first goal. But now the thing is, because I've seen, and I don't want to be negative on this story because it's such a great story. Now the thing is, what do you do going forward? Because I've seen a bunch of times where they come up, they score their first goal, everybody's talking about them, they get a little bit of a shot or an elevation in the lineup, and then it just kind of goes downhill. So can you build off of it and basically put the onus on the coach, where it's like, I'm here to be an NHL player, because it's up for grabs for anybody to do. Coaches have to win. They have to put the best players on the ice, and they don't care where they're from or how much they make. If you go out there and prove that you can play, and the coach trusts you to put you out there, and he has a belief that you can contribute in a positive manner, he's going to put you out there. So let's just see how the story builds, and if he can continue to do it to try to become an NHL player and a mainstay in that lineup, which is a difficult thing to do. They got good players. They're a good team. One of the best teams in the league.
Last one for you, Jeff. The other big trade, of course, so far this year was the Mikko Rantanen trade out of Colorado going to Carolina. To me, a no-brainer for the Hurricanes, but I'm more interested in your perspective on the impact to the dressing room in Colorado, where anytime it's fairly clear that one team is worse off by subtracting a player from your lineup, what does that do to the psyche of everybody else that's left there in Colorado?
Well, from one perspective, I have a lot of respect for the Colorado Avalanche, where they did not take players' feelings into the equation here. They were like, this is what we're doing. This is business. And we're not paying a guy more than our best player. And that's just as simple as that. And we're going to it's kind of like Kelly McCrimmon, how he's just like, we got to find out a different way to win here. And you see so many teams year after year, they just keep going back to battle with the same thing. And the way things are structured in the NHL, it's like, that's the way it is. It's like, there's our team. Let's go get them, because there's not a lot of trades. There's not a lot of movement, mostly because all the guys have no movement clauses, no trade clauses. It's like, I hate it about the league where there's not a lot of movement in the league, where it's like so many teams. How many times have you guys watched a team where you're like, man, that team could use a shakeup right now? Like, just a trade. It's so great for the fan bases too. But when you're like Nathan McKinnon type player and you're losing a guy like Rantanen, he must be like, man, I do a lot of my business with that guy. I'm a 100-point player. I'm a Hart winner. I'm a Cup winner. And that's the guy that I ride or die with. And you're taking him away from me. You wonder what that does to his psyche. But at the end of the day, maybe they're not done and they do something else where there's some long-term benefit for the team and maybe even possibly for this year. So it's, you know, to lose a player like that, it's pretty shocking for everybody, because at first you're thinking, what the hell are we doing here? And it also sucks to be the guy like Jess and Drury that are going into that locker room where everybody say, Jesus, we got rid of Rantanen. What the hell are we doing? And you're sitting there and you're like, well, I'm the guy that got traded for him. So that's a bit of an awkward thing. But I got respect where the organization said, like, I was talking to some people about it where it's like Mikko Rantanen, like, wasn't there a number that came to mind? And there's two different philosophies and ways where you're like, I can play for another 7 or 8 quality years and play with Nathan McKinnon.
Mm-hmm.
Can't you find a number that makes you somewhat happy that's not 14 million? Like if it was 11 or 12 or something, to play with Nathan McKinnon for the next chunk of your career, it's pretty enticing. But there's other perspectives and there's other different agent philosophy, what they want to do and how they want to attack it, whether it be percentage of the cap or we don't care who's the best player, we want to make the most. And if you have that angle or idea about the signing or the negotiation, there's always a chance the team's going to look at it and say, we're moving you. Sorry, that doesn't work for us. So I guess he tried to, and if I'm Rantanen, I would have thought the same thing. They're going to probably give me something close to what I want. But in the end, they just said, we're moving you. So
Well, as an addendum to that question, Jeff, sorry, one more. As an addendum to that, you know, with the cap rising rapidly over the next few years, there's going to be situations where the best player on a team is not paid the highest amount of money. Is that something that's discussed in a room? Is that something that bothers players? Or do they look at it as, you know, when I signed my contract, this is the most I could get given the circumstances, and I don't worry about player Y, who's not quite as good as me, is now making more because the cap has gone skyrocketed crazy?
that has been that has never been, in my experience, 12 years in the league, I have never heard a player talk about how much he should get paid in front of other players, teammates. That is something that's kept privately between the agent, family. Like I've never sat in the locker room or in the back of a bus or at dinner and somebody blurted out, I've got to be this percentage of a cap or I got to be the high. That's always something. And maybe players are different now and they talk about that openly about how much they want to be paid, but I've never heard anything like that. And there's probably going to be some stances from organizations where, like, this is a completely different example, but everybody's talking about like a John Tavares contract for next year, and Claude Giroux is an example, but it's always a different team that wants to ante up for that money. So some of these players, it's going to be Mikko Rantanen is an example. Maybe it's a different team that comes out of the blue, whether it be Carolina or Columbus or Nashville or somebody else that wants to pay him that mega contract. Sometimes it's not the team that's already given the player like $60 or $70 million, and they're like, you're going to get that money somewhere else, not from us. Like Claude Giroux is an example. He got a deal at $6 million from Ottawa. It wasn't from Philadelphia. It's from a team. So sometimes that different one that's going to be all fired. They will open the checkbook for you, whatever you want. So that's ultimately going to lead to player movement if they want that massive bump.
Jeff O'Neill, the O-Dog, our good friend. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We'll let you get back to sleep now, as you mentioned. Apologies for waking up and disturbing your slumber. Have a great rest of your Saturday. We'll do it again real soon, buddy.
Guys, let the awkwardness continue. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jeff. Take care. We'll see you again soon. Jeff O'Neill joining us this morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's presented by Play Now. Always great to catch up with Jeff. We're way behind on our commercial break, so we'll take another one and be back with more Jets talk Saturday morning. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by Play Now.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We are back Saturday morning. What I told you I was running it. Don't give me that hand, Dave M. I saw the hand. I knew I can take us back and in and out of break there. Don't be giving me that.
I thought you were literally going to do the speaking portion and not necessarily the technical portion. So that's why I was trying to do that. But all I can say so far is that I don't think we've ever sounded better than in the first half an hour of this show.
I think this is a pretty good sign that as we've reached 16 years, we should just shut down this entire operation and go our merry ways. I think that's what today's technical difficulties have shown us. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we will get everything figured out for tonight's Illegal Curve post-game show. So that'll come at you after the Jets and the Washington Capitals. That'll be right around. What's that, Dave?
I said about 10 hours from now.
Yeah, about 10 hours from now, 8:45 p.m. The Jets and the Caps, that game will have concluded, and hopefully by then we'll have figured out why none of our technology worked. It's amazing that it all collapsed on the exact same day. That's the problem that I can't wrap my brain around. But in any event, we will do that as we continue this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. As I mentioned, no changes to the lineups for the Winnipeg Jets. You figure that they had success in Boston. You're going to keep it going. Then we'll see. There's 3 games left, really. They've had a successful road trip so far, winning the 2 games in Montreal and Boston, the 2 games where they were certainly the better of the 2 teams, both on paper and on the ice. And now tonight against the Capitals, it'll be a really entertaining game. I think it's just going to be a good game between 2 very good teams, 2 teams that, especially in the Capitals, I think nobody really had many expectations for them. And anytime the top 2 teams in the NHL will do battle, it's just going to be a fun time to watch it tonight and then join us for the post-game show.
Boys, we get to watch Pierre-Luc Dubois play hockey tonight. I mean, that alone gets me very excited, and he's quietly having a good year with 11 goals and 41 points. I think he's 4th or 3rd on the Capitals in scoring right now. But if you go up and down this roster, guys, you're just seeing guys that are having career years, right? Dylan Strome is on pace for a career year. Alexei Protas, he's already put up the most points he's ever put up in the NHL. Connor McMichael, Tom Wilson's got 20 goals already. He's on pace for a career year. Jacob Chikrin, guys, is there a better trade right now, off-season trade? Because didn't that happen right on July 1st, right? So Jacob Chychrun has really been a nice fit. Nick Jensen's a good defenseman, Dave, but obviously Jacob Chychrun's got have a higher offensive ceiling. Jensen, of course, is more of a defensive defenseman, but you look at this Capitals team, guys, and they are deep. And they've been getting, obviously, excellent goaltending from Logan Thompson, but Charlie Lindgren has been pretty good as well, right? Former Montreal Canadian, right? So Logan Thompson's been a huge story. I think if Connor Hellebuck wasn't having the year that he was having, I think, more people would be talking about him in the Vezina conversation, Dave. But let's be honest, there is no Vezina conversation this year. Give Hellebuck the trophy already. I think the question is just, is he going to win the Hart Trophy or be a Hart Trophy finalist? But you're absolutely right, Drew. And, we talked to O-Dog about this. Like, to me, it's just like, I'm just cherishing watching Ovechkin play. Like, every time I have the opportunity, I'm watching Washington or I'm watching the highlights. Like, I'm not sure if you guys saw the goal he scored the other night. Was that against Minnesota? Was that Minnesota that he scored the goal against? No, hold on. It was Ottawa he scored the goal against. Like, it was kind of a bit of a kind of knuckler from the point, but like what he's doing at 39 years old, Dave, I think, like, again, I don't care if I sound like a broken record. I've already mentioned it, but what he's doing at 39 years old, like on pace for, 35 to 40 goals this year, it's incredible. And he's obviously been healthy for the majority of his career, but we're just watching greatness right now. Obviously, we're hoping that the Jets are able to pull out the win, but the Caps are the only team, guys, that are allowing less goals per game than the Jets. So both these teams are good offensive teams, and they're both good defensive teams. So like you said, Drew, this should be getting more national attention. It's ridiculous that it's not getting more national attention because these are the two best teams in the league right now, and I think it's going to be a fantastic game.
Yeah, it's sort of funny. Ken Wiebe, in his article today in the Winnipeg Free Press, Dave, an article you can find, of course, on illegalcurve.com, just highlighted how close these two teams are. We know they're close in the standings, with the Jets being ahead of the Capitals, with the Capitals having a couple games in hand, but just everything about these two teams is basically 1-2 in the stats. In terms of goals for, 1-2. In terms of goals against, 1-2. Goals against per game, goals for per game. They each have the number of goal scorers over 20 goals so far this year. It's just really it's sort of the symmetry between Washington and Winnipeg, and also they're right next to each other in the alphabetical standings as well, if you want to look even deeper at that. So two teams that don't have a lot in common theoretically, playing in different conferences, have a lot in common on all over the stats pages entering tonight's game.
Well, as you said, Drew, the southeast or southleast, as when the Jets came back, as if folks can remember, all the way back to 2011 and 2012, when they were part of that, going up against Washington and Tampa and Carolina in that somewhat modified division, because of course they'd moved from Atlanta. But no, I think you're right. And I had the comment up from Joe. These are two of the hottest teams in the NHL, and there's so many parallels. The Caps have a good, not as good a power play. Theirs is the 10th overall power play. They've got the third best penalty kill, though, in the NHL. The Jets, I think, are around 15th or 6th. I think they're 16th. But the fact is they've moved up from when they were 21st. They've gotten a little bit better. And, of course, we've talked about how important on this show for months now, how important the penalty kill is. And to be able to have the penalty kill still humming along as he, without Adam Lowry, without Morgan Barron, those are two big guys who play a role on the PK. So that's going to be important. And look, like we've talked about, you've won 5 games now without your captain. You went from your worst game of the season in Utah, what was it, like 9 days ago or something like that? Feels like a lifetime ago, but something like 9 days ago when they played that terrible game against Utah. And, they were, if you go back and read the chat, I'm sure folks weren't, oh, here we go, this is the Jets, blah, blah, blah. And then they've gone and reeled off 5 straight. So I'm looking forward to it tonight. I think it's going to be a great game. I think that you can't not be excited to watch these two teams. And the truth is, to be honest with you, who really cares whether it's getting national attention or not? I don't know that. I don't care personally. I enjoy watching the broadcast, and that's about it for me. And so, although I thought that it was a TSN broadcast, so I was texting with our boy Dan Robertson this morning, but he reminded me it's, of course, a Sportsnet broadcast. So we'll not be hearing Dan and Kevin on the broadcast. You'll be hearing someone else.
Well, the reason why it bothers me, Dave, is because if this was the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Washington Capitals, obviously both teams in the Eastern Conference, we would have been hearing about this every single minute on TSN and Sportsnet, right? So like it's like that inferiority complex, that Winnipegger in me that just wants the Jets to be getting more national attention. Because like we've talked about, guys, throughout the show, you take out, that little, losing streak that they had late November, early December, mid-December, and the Jets have been in first place for the entire year. Like this is not last year. Like we really, and I'm not saying that, either of you guys has been, bringing this up, or fans for that matter. This is a very different Jets team this year. It really is. Obviously, the core of the team is relatively the same, and with the exception of Brendan Dillon, there really wasn't that many regulars, that started the season last year for the Jets who aren't on the team this year. But it's a marquee matchup. So I'm with you, Dave. I even though I would like it to be getting a little bit more attention, east of us here. At the end of the day, the Jets don't care. They're going to take care of business, or obviously we're hoping they take care of business with the win against Washington today. But, this is going to be a fascinating game because, this is going to be, a possible Stanley Cup final preview. We don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here. But, guys, it was 2018, the last time the Jets had a juggernaut like this. And who won the Stanley Cup that year, right? So it's not out of the realm of possibility. And, I think there's a lot of juicy matchups to look forward to. I don't know if it's been confirmed yet if Logan Thompson's going to be in net, but if it is, then it's going to be, the two best goalies in the league right now. And, a lot of people might not, have thought that was the case, but Logan Thompson, guys, it's actually a shame that I think that he's not going to be on Team Canada for this Four Nations tournament.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. He deserves to be there. Scheifele deserves to be there. The brain trust of Team Canada better hope that they made the right decisions. Otherwise, they're not going to be the brain trust for the Olympics coming up in a couple of years. But that's a separate issue entirely. You got 3 games to go. I mean, that's what the Jets have. They got 3 games to go before the break. And it's a matter of now of sort of finishing strong. They've done by any sort of date range you want to use, going back to December the 1st, so the last 3 months, the Edmonton Oilers have played 27 games. They've got 40 points. I guess that's tops in the league. The Jets are tied with the Dallas Stars and the Washington Capitals for second spot, a point behind the Oilers. So I don't care what metrics you're using. I don't care what date range you're using. It doesn't really, the proof is in the pudding at this point in time that the Winnipeg Jets, are one of the best teams in the NHL. Of course, we all know that it matters come April and come the end of the regular season. But when you have 3 games to go before this break, and I think this break is going to do absolute wonders for those players on the Jets who aren't going to be participating, and even the ones who are participating. Again, it's not the most rigorous schedule we've ever seen. So it is really going to be even a quiet. Now, the play of hockey, the games themselves might be more intense than your average, mid-February hockey game. When you're in the dog days of the season, so that might wear on you a little bit more as well. But at the very least, I do think that this 2-week break is going to do wonders, I think, for the league in general. And you're now going to see the wheat separate from the chaff when you come back from the Four Nations Cup, and then the stretch drive and the run to the playoffs really begins in earnest. And I do think it's a run that the Winnipeg Jets are prepared for and have been building up for, Dave, and are excited to take that challenge on head first.
Well, look, the fact of the matter is, as much as folks wanted to go from being eliminated by Colorado last year in the first round to being back in the playoffs and forgetting about the long regular season, 82 games and all that stuff, I think ultimately at the end of the day, there's so many things that have to be built. Like, I agree with what Jeff said when he came on. Obviously, I'm agreeing with what you guys are saying. I think none of us would disagree that this is a good Jets team, and it was a very good Jets team, and they were good last year, but they're better this year. And why are they better this year? Because they've instituted changes. Their PK, I think, is better. It still has room for improvement. Their power play is, it's 1,000 times better, but so that's not even a question. And I think that's what they're doing. That's what they're building. That's the muscle memory. And, you mentioned it, Drew, 15-1-0 to start. You're like, okay, unbelievable, historic. Then they had a 10-game stretch, 3-7-0. And since December 4th, they're 17-6-3. So this is, or actually maybe 18, because I don't think that included the Boston win. But the point is that this is a Jets team that is showing us that they are for real. When you're able to lose guys like Adam Lowry and Morgan Barron And I know Morgan Barron's only been lost for the one game, but when you're losing guys like Adam Lowry, who we talk about how important a role he plays, you're able to lose those guys, absorb them. That shows you the depth of the organization. And again, with Connor Hellebuck playing to that level that he's at right now, I think that this Jets team, you're right, Drew, is in terms of they're primed, they're ready, they're building this year towards something. Look, even a second round exit, I don't think is going to be acceptable. I think would require major changes. I mean, depending on how the series goes, of course. But this is a team that has to have success in the playoffs in order to validate what they've done and the way they've continued to stick with this core.
And just quickly, guys, like sticking with how impressive the Jets have been, right? Dave, you mentioned the record since early December.
Yeah.
Minnesota's won 3 games in a row. So you lead on Dallas. They played 2 more games. But, I mean, we could easily be talking about like a not what I don't mean is easily, but, if the shoe was on the other foot and we're talking about, the Jets lose to Montreal, they lose to Boston, and all of a sudden Dallas is only 4 points back as opposed to 8 points back. That's what I'm talking about with the games in hand is that the Jets, obviously, it's important that they're winning these games going into the Four Nations tournament is what I'm trying to say here, because obviously, the Jets ideally want to win the President's Trophy, even though winning the President's Trophy doesn't guarantee you're going to win the Stanley Cup. But what they want to do here is finish first in the West so they assure a better first-round matchup, right? We've talked about it. It could be the difference between playing Colorado or Calgary, right? And obviously the Jets match up a lot better against Calgary. I think we would all agree. Maybe the Jets match up a little bit better against the Avalanche now that they don't have Nichushkin and they have Marty Necas. But, yeah, it's been a very impressive run. Dave's absolutely right. The special teams continue. I mean, it's almost, guys, like the Jets are making it look like it's easy to score in the power play. Like it's effortless. Like they're that confident. And I don't mean that in a cocky way. I mean that like we've said this before this season, that they expect to score every time they're out there. And the second power play unit has also looked dangerous and has looked pretty good the entire year, right? So, regardless if they end up getting, the full 2 points or they don't end up winning, they're still in a great position in the standings. But, when you've got teams like Dallas and Minnesota who are hard charging at you, and obviously, like we talked about, you still want to finish ahead of Edmonton and Vegas for first overall in the West and ideally first overall in the league. They're in a nice position now. And you're right, Drew, the Four Nations tournament is good timing for guys like Adam Lowry and Morgan Barron, but also, you think of the Devils with Nico Hischier and Jacob Markstrom. You think of the Minnesota Wild with Kirill Kaprizov, right? Like it's, the break is turning out to be for other teams around the league as well. But yeah, there's 2 tough teams coming up. Like the Islanders are a decent team, but you've got the Capitals and the Hurricanes, 2 of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. So I'm absolutely fascinated to see how these games go, because we've seen it time and time again this year, Drew. The Jets have stepped up and beaten some really good teams. Basically, all the good teams in the league this year they've beaten, except Vegas.
Well, good teams against good teams. It should be a good game. We'll go to break. When we come back, one final segment as this bizarre edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show continues. It's presented by Play Now. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Dave, are you pressing the commercial button or do you want me to press the commercial button? Okay, I'll press the commercial button.
Right now.
Don't go anywhere.
Let's get along, boys, okay? Use your words.
It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We are back Saturday morning. We're into overtime on the Illegal Curve hockey show, namely because we started so late because of technical difficulties. But we're still here talking about the Jets, talking about the Capitals. Post-game show later on tonight, 8:45 p.m., where we will hopefully be back to our normal routine setups. Because I'll be honest, my arm is beginning to get sore holding up my camera this whole time.
Drew, my left hand is numb right now, completely numb.
And it's weird. And it's weird because my back is sore from carrying the show.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it's good thing you have a good ergonomic chair there, David. Well done on your part.
David, just quickly, my ears that are hurting with this audio quality from Drew. That's really what's bothering me. I have an ear infection.
I don't know what he said. He was breaking up on me. It doesn't matter. With quickly though, just some comments. A couple of big trades last night in the NHL. Vancouver heavily involved in the majority of those, obviously ending the controversy between JT Miller and Elias Pettersson by sending him to the Rangers and getting back Philip Cheadle and then getting back a first-round pick, which they then flipped to Pittsburgh for Marcus Pettersson, a guy that a lot of us had sort of an eye on as a potential acquisition for the Winnipeg Jets. Just a quick thought on sort of the moves that were made by the various teams last night. Ezzy, I'll start with you.
Well, first of all, I love the fact that 2 weeks in a row now, guys, there have been big trades on Friday night, right? So, I mean, you don't see that very often, and it's great for us being on Saturday mornings. But obviously, guys, pretty funny that, some people are expecting Elias Pettersson to be traded, and then they acquire another Pettersson. I thought that was pretty funny, first of all. But
and they've already got another Pettersson. Ezzy, they've already got another Pettersson. So that's the third Pettersson they've got on the show.
That's what I'm saying. Obviously, the Vancouver Canucks have a Pettersson fetish. But obviously, guys, the JT Miller trade, a little bit underwhelming if you're a Canucks fan. Philip Cheadle's a good player, and his underlying numbers are good. If you actually look, kind of similar, guys, to a couple of years ago when we were talking about Nikolai Ehlers' usage. He doesn't necessarily get as much usage as guys like Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider and other guys on New York. But first off, I just love the fact that we're seeing these big trades because we kind of guessed, guys, a few weeks back that with the Four Nations tournament we might see some big trades here in late January and early February, and that's exactly what's happening. But look, I mean, O-Dog said it himself. I mean, JT Miller had 100 points last year, and it remains to be seen long-term who wins this trade. But you look at this trade right now, and it's certainly looking good for the Rangers. I don't think the Rangers are going to be, doing much damage this year in the playoffs. But I guess, now everything is on Elias Pettersson because the Vancouver Canucks clearly chose Pettersson over JT Miller, right, Dave?
You say that now until next week's show when he's no longer on the team either, has he?
Well, it's always possible that he's traded. It obviously, it looked like Carolina really wanted him, and then they pivoted to Mikko Rantanen. But I guess that there's always the possibility Pettersson is traded. But for now, at the very least, it's his team.
It's his team, and the Canucks have to hope that he bounces back. Frankly, he's been lousy. He's been, there's been talk that he's still banged up, and that's as a result of why his numbers are way down from where they were when they signed him to that large contract. But if Vancouver, ends up betting poorly here on Pettersson, they're going to be in for a world of hurt. It's just that simple. I mean, I tweeted this earlier, that when they had and I don't even think that Corey Schneider and Roberto Luongo disliked each other to the same degree that Pettersson and JT Miller did. It was just a function of you can't have two great goaltenders when you only have one net, especially at that time in the year, at that time in the NHL. It was a one goaltender. It was a 1 and then a 2. It wasn't a 1A and a 1B like you see so often now. But with regard to the Canucks, if they bet wrong here, and if Pettersson doesn't bounce back, boy, they're in for a world of hurt because they're just not, they're going to be a shell of the team that got so close to actually accomplishing something. So time will tell on that front for the Vancouver Canucks. Dave, your thoughts?
Well, I don't really have much to add as he had a good take there, but the only thing I did check out and look at was the fact that they have a that was a good take, Azzy. But no, I just wanted to see if those two teams play each other again. They do next month, March 22nd in New York. So should be a fun little game for the Canucks fans, and we'll see who's on that team still well after the trade deadline. But I think it's interesting that this stuff is happening now in early February. I mean, these are pretty significant deals that are happening, and so will Winnipeg similarly, of course, let's bring it back here to the Jets because that's what, so many of you are in the chat wanting to hear about. Nobody thinks this is Canucks lunch. So, will this get Kevin Cheveldayoff moving? Or as Jeff O'Neill said, I mean, you talk about that chemistry, boys, and the guys, it's such a fine line, right? Because, the team wants you to make a move, but they also don't want to eliminate someone's job. Now, Parker Ford, Brad Lambert, they don't have a established place on the Jets. They're not looked at. They'll be black aces at best. They're not going to be guys who are going to be impactful for the playoffs. Oh, I mean, I guess if you go deep enough, potentially. But the fact of the matter is, how does the GM walk that fine line? That's why Kevin Cheveldayoff is the GM, and we're not. We just get to talk about the moves he does or doesn't make. But ultimately, that's what he's going to have to do. He's going to have to make that decision as to how he's going to potentially move things around. And again, I got to tell you guys, I think a guy like Vlad Namestnikov's not going to have any problem sliding down and becoming your fourth line center and making moves accordingly. But it'll just be interesting to see if Kevin Cheveldayoff waits or fires it now that the things have gotten going. Because we saw last year, right, boys, the trade between was it Vancouver and Boston? That's in Lindholm to Boston. Or was it to Calgary and Vancouver? It's Calgary to Vancouver.
Yeah.
And then, with Lindholm. And then right after that, which the Jets were reportedly in on, that's when he made the move for Monahan. So we'll see if they're willing to go, get that going now, or if they're going to wait a little bit longer.
Well, I will tell on that one thing here. Oh, sorry, Drew. I was just going to quickly say here, with all of the injuries the Jets have had throughout the season, obviously, they're more healthy now with just Morgan Barron and Adam Lowry out of the lineup. But, the more, the Jets continue to win, with Vlad Namestnikov as the 2C, or before that, Adam Lowry is the 2C. Like, I'm not saying that I would be surprised if the Jets acquire a 2C, but you wonder if maybe the Jets' focus is going to be on bringing in a top 6 winger, or maybe all the Jets do is bring in a top 4 defenseman, right? Like, again, I know the chat's going to go nuts here, and I can't see the chat because I'm on my phone. So, chat, I miss you. I'll hopefully see you again tonight for the Jets Capitals postgame show. But you know what I mean, guys? Like, I think it's just given maybe Chevy a little more to think about in terms of, like, is that really the biggest need on this team? Is it 2C? Is it a top 6 winger? Is it a top 4 defenseman? Is it a left side defenseman versus a right side defenseman? I think we all agree the Jets are stronger on the right side. I mean, like, nobody expected Logan Stanley to be going over on the right side, but you've got Colin Miller there. You've got Dylan Coghlan as an option, Dave, as kind of a number 8 defenseman, right? Ville Heinola is not playing at all. That's not even something we've talked about today, guys, which is incredible that Ville Heinola just can't get in the lineup right now.
7 straight games. 7 straight games.
7 straight games, right? So obviously, that's something to keep an eye on. We expect Logan Stanley and Hayden Fleury to be the third pair tonight, right?
No, Miller and Stanley.
Oh, pardon me. I didn't know that. I thought
Yeah,
it was
Miller and Stanley. That was the pairing in Boston as well. Stanley back on the left side, Miller on the right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I didn't do the post game show. I didn't watch that game. I watched a little bit of it, but I didn't realize that Miller was in. But so it's going to be Colin Miller, which to be honest with you, should be the third pairing right side defenseman. I think Heinola should be in there with Miller, and then there's an argument to be made that Fleury should be above Stanley. But we know that Stanley continues to start for the Jets. But the point is, guys, that with the way the Jets continue to win, I think everyone, or I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people are just expecting, okay, who's going to be this year's Sean Monahan? Who's going to be this year's Tyler Toffoli? All I'm saying is, you keep seeing the Jets, whether it's David Gustafson, whether it's Parker Ford scoring in his NHL debut, right, Dave? You're continuing to see the Jets win despite having guys out of the lineup.
That you are. The Jets are just they're just rolling right along. Whatever comes their way, they're not fazed by it. We'll see if that is the case again later on tonight when the Jets and the Capitals do battle. We'll bring you the post-game coverage right around 8:45 p.m. later on this evening. Thank you to everybody.
Drew, don't forget though, it's a double game day. So
Moose playing too.
The Moose are playing in Chicago. Another crack at those Wolves. I'm not touching the button, and as he can't do it, so you're safe. No Manuk Moose minute. Although shout out Tico and Paulie, because it's funny how. Oh wait, what's that?
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Manuk Moose minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Sorry, Drew. I know Drew probably wants to get going, but anyways,
come on, Drew. A big Moose win last night.
Some of us have things they have to do today. Some of us have things they have to do.
You can go. Ezzy and I can close down the show if you want.
Just hurry up with your Moose minute, please.
Hey, it's been 16 years. We've known each other a lot longer, and we still irritate each other.
Dave, I'm pretty sure my favorite Drew is Ornery Drew, and that's what we're getting right now.
Yeah, that's true, but that's usual Drew for the record. So anyways, quickly, the Moose in Milwaukee facing Chase DeLeo, Ezzy, the former 2014 draft pick. We saw him get drafted along Nikolai Ehlers in 2014 in Philadelphia. But Chase DeLeo, he signed an AHL deal with Charlotte, got claimed on waivers by Milwaukee. So he's with the Admirals.
I'm pretty sure, just to cut you off, I know, and just to prolong this to make Drew even more mad, do you guys remember when we had Chase DeLeo on and he had his dog Chase Jr. on in the TSN?
I do remember that. Yes, I do. Yes, I do remember that, of course. But anyway, so Chase was in the lineup. He's facing the Moose for the first time in 7 years. Moose had Tyrell Bauer tried to have a big fight again, two games in a row. But it's funny, his jersey got pulled over his head. So he was trying to fight anyone, didn't realize it was the linesman who had him. But ultimately, and that was a fight with Kyle Marino, who he's fought already 4 times in his career, I think, at least 4, including earlier this year in November in Winnipeg. But we got to mention Dom DeVincentis, his first start since November of earlier this year, after which he got sent down to the ECHL. So he picks up the win in his first AHL game since November. And then, of course, we should mention that the Moose were good in the third period. Milwaukee's a team that's ahead of them, which, by the way, every team is ahead of them. But the Milwaukee Admirals, the Moose built a 2-0 lead. Dominic, Drew's gone. Yes, no rush anymore. All right, well, that seems there we go. As now it's our time to shine. But ultimately, you had Dominic Tonnato score a shorthanded goal. Then you had Dylan Coghlan, who you mentioned, Ezzy. He got his second in Antlers. Oh, Drew's back. But Dylan Coghlan got his second in Antlers to make it a 2-0 game for Manitoba. And then, sure enough, the Admirals tied it up 2-2. And Mason Shaw, another veteran, he got a goal to make it 3-2. Moose locked it down in the third period, something we haven't seen them do. Held Milwaukee to just 3 shots. So they picked up the win. And all I was going to say, Drew, was that the Moose are back in action tonight. So it's a double game day. There's lots to be excited for. The 16th anniversary of Illegal Curve. Smash that like button. Subscribe to our channel. Make sure the ring notification is on, people. And share it on Facebook, on Instagram, on Blue Sky, on what else do we have? Twitter. Threads. Yes.
Fine.
We are the number one almost. We're about to surpass Sarah, which I keep bugging her about. I'm like, we're 20. She goes, I don't even use it. I'm like, doesn't matter. We will get ahead of you.
When it
Become
comes
number
to
one.
social media tracking numbers, Dave M is the boss of that. I didn't even know I had a Threads account. Dave's yelling at me for not retweeting on Threads or whatever the hell it's called. I don't even know what that is, but that's okay. In any event, 8:45 tonight, the Illegal Curve post-game show. We'll talk about the Jets and the Washington Capitals. Big thanks to all of you for staying with us through our technical difficulties. We appreciate that very much. So many of you made the chat a lively place to be and had great numbers all show long. So if you haven't already done so, be sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the podcast, and make sure that you've turned your notifications on. That's what Dave means when he's saying ring the bell. Turn your notifications on. Big thanks to all of our sponsors. That's our friends at Play Now. They're the title sponsor. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Holt Dental, Boston Pizza, City Place. We'll be at City Place next Friday for the Jets and the Islanders. We'll do our noon hour show from there next Friday, the 7th of February. So be sure to join us at City Place next Friday to talk about the Jets and the New York Islanders. And of course, our friends at Seagram's as well. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. We'll see everybody later on tonight. The Illegal Curve post-game show right around 9:45. The best way to celebrate 16 years of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show is by joining us for the Illegal Curve post-game show. For Dave Manouk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We'll see everybody a little bit later on tonight. Have a great rest of your Saturday, everyone. 8:45 for the post-game show.